Rosa Guzman Snyder. She serves as the Director of Community Development at the National Center for Families Learning. She was originally from El Paso, Texas. She grew up in Denver, Colorado, and now she's living in Homewood, Illinois. She's a mom of two amazing kids, and she's committed to providing the best opportunities for her children and families and children across the country. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Olga. Thank you so much, friends, for inviting me into this space, inviting me into this learning community. I'm so grateful to be here with you. As we start a new year, I'm sure we all have so many resolutions and so many things we want to get done this year. But I want to commend you for showing up every day to serve families across the country. And I want to invite you and encourage you to continue taking care of yourselves during this time. I know I'm still very much cognizant that we're still in the middle of a pandemic. And sometimes I think we forget that we're living amidst chaos, right? And so encourage you to take care of yourselves and your families during this time. So welcome to Unpacking Our Biases in Adult Education. So just a little bit about our time together today. We're going to be talking and exploring some of the biases that exist sometimes in our classrooms in adult education, particularly when we work with families. So to do that, we're going to be doing some activities. I'm going to be sharing some tools with you that hopefully you can take back to your classrooms and do them with your students. I'm going to share a little bit, not very much, about NCFL and the work that we do. We'll talk about unpacking our biases, talking a little bit how we commit to transforming those biases, looking at some anti-bias education goals. Lastly, we'll talk about funds of knowledge, and then I'll leave some space for questions. So I know Olga already talked a little bit about me, but just want to share a little bit. This is my amazing family. I've got two amazing kids, you all, Thomas and Eliana. I have a third and a fourth grader. I work for the National Center for Families Learning. I've been at the center for about 3.5 years. Previous to that, I was an executive director for the Community Language Cooperative. It was an organization focused on providing language justice to nonprofits and education spaces. What I want to do right now is kind of do an activity to kind of center us in a space and kind of build a sense of solidarity among the group. I believe somebody's going to be sharing a template with you all. This is a writing template from a great group that works out of Dallas. Their name is Journeyman Inc. And they do some writing templates and some curriculum around social emotional learning for both adults and children. So feel free to look them up, Journeyman Inc. But I'll be sharing a template right now. This template is called My Journey. And this is a great way for you all to be able to connect with your adult learners and in a way build solidarity. I think there's benefit in seeing everyone's writing on here. So I'll share mine with you right now. So I start right here where it says, my journey began in El Paso, Texas. I can still remember traveling to Ciudad Juarez to see the dentist. My childhood can be captured by church services, menudo on Saturdays, thrift stores, and family gatherings. I eventually left home for my husband's job. It was tough leaving my family. And from there, my travels took me through Louisville, Kentucky for work, and eventually Chicago. When I get tired, I always remember, I have a family who loves me unconditionally, and I'm loved by my Heavenly Father. My name is Rosa, and I believe in spreading kindness and joy. My journey is not over. I am still here. So my invitation to you all right now is to pick a row and go ahead and fill out some of these columns, whatever you feel comfortable sharing with folks. You don't have to share everything. You can skip some, but I do think it's powerful to see what other people are writing as we're writing. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to actually ask maybe 4 or 5 people to share, to read with us. And as 4 or 5 people are sharing, I'm going to invite the rest of the group to listen intentionally and see if anything that other people are saying is relatable to you? Is it something that you can say, oh, my childhood can be captured with that as well, or I can really see having to move because of a spouse or a partner, or I've had to move because of caring for an elderly parent, or whatever that might be. So I'm going to actually ask 4 or 5 people, if you all want, to unmute and even turn your camera on if you're comfortable, to share with us. Does anybody want to start?
My name
Okay.
is Rita Cardenas.
Okay.
Okay, my journey began in Roten, Texas. I was born and raised in Roten, Texas. I can still remember when I was a child how I had to miss several days of school because I would have to work and help my parents pay bills because times were rough back then. My childhood can be captured by going to church. My mom and dad were God-fearing people, so they have us get up early in the morning to go to Sunday school. And then I remember from Sunday school when the monjitas would give us cookies and Kool-Aid. I eventually left home because they moved my dad. They closed. My dad used to work for the Katy Railroad, and they closed it down in Road 10. So they moved him down here to Waco. So I ended up here, and here's where I got married and had my 5 children.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. Is there anybody here that related? You can either share, unmute, or relate, or use your reactions related to anything that Rita shared with us right now. Rita, I related to church service and Sunday school, family gatherings. Anybody else relate to any of these things that Rita shared?
This is Margie. I identified with I didn't have to work to help pay bills, but I had 5 siblings that came after me. So I spent a lot of my childhood working as a mother's and daddy's helper. So that part I relate to.
Thank you, Margie.
Thanks, Rita.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. Does anybody else want to read their line, their row?
Well, mine says, I'm from Kearns, Texas. I can still remember riding bikes all over the neighborhood. That was the method of travel back then. And my childhood could be captured in everything, living in Texas, everything revolved around Friday night football. And we all gathered at the football games. And when I was in high school, I played all through school. And that was kind of what life was. We wasn't playing football on the field. We were playing pickup football games there in Kearns. That's about all there is to do if you know anything about this area and about Kearns. And I eventually left home because I joined the United States Army when I was 18. And from there, travels took me to Germany. And then I was deployed to Desert Storm. And I was over there during the first Desert Storm in 1991. I was over in Saudi Arabia and Iraq. And when I get tired, I always remember that I know I can. I just have to try. I just have to dig a little deeper. And my name is Greg. Of course, I believe there's always a way to do it if you just look for it. Never get weary in well doing. And my journey's not over. I'm still here, still fighting.
Thank you so much for being brave and vulnerable and sharing with us. Folks, did anybody relate or identify to anything that Gregory shared out today? I see somebody said, I can relate to riding bikes everywhere, Gregory. Okay, Anne-Marie shared that. Yes, Friday Night Lights, never stop fighting. Riding bikes all over town, yes. So friends, this is a great activity that you can do. And I know it seems simple, but what it does is it helps to support building solidarity with your group. Oftentimes in an adult learning environment, you have people with such rich experiences. And so sometimes it's often hard to find what people care about or what experiences that they've had and how they can relate that to others. So what my invitation to you today is using templates and using activities like this to share out with your group so that the group can know that there are things that we have in common. And this oftentimes helps to reduce those biases that we form about our adult learners. And it also gives our adult learners an opportunity to learn about us. One of the things that I think is interesting and that I always share out is that as instructors, as facilitators, we have to be able to model vulnerability. We cannot ask our students to do something that we are not willing to do ourselves. So particularly when it comes to writing templates or sharing or being vulnerable, this is where we kind of have to set that example and go first, so that other folks can also feel comfortable sharing. So I'm going to share real quickly a little bit about NCFL and what we do. We are an organization based out of Louisville, Kentucky. We work nationwide. We've been around for 31, 32 years now, really focused on looking at education with a whole family approach. So understanding that adults and parenting adults need the supports so that their children can do better. If you all have heard of family literacy, our founder was instrumental in writing the family literacy legislation back in the early 90s, the 4-component family literacy model. We believe that families bring funds of knowledge to our spaces. We believe in spaces of shared learning where we are learning from our students and students are learning from us. We believe in creating relationships that are built on mutual respect and trust. We believe in creating programming environments that are inclusive. What that means is that we want to take that approach of allowing people to bring their whole selves into that space, bring in their culture, their lived experience, anything that they want to offer to a space for us. We believe that by doing that, we can provide equitable opportunities, and also that families can be change agents, particularly when we're looking at social issues or social justice issues. Families can take that role in making changes in our society. So right now we're going to just kind of shift gears a little bit and talking a little bit about our biases. So how do we unpack our biases? The first thing that we need to do is that we need to assume that we have them. We all have biases. We all have biases that consciously or unconsciously we've created about people. And this is really like, sometimes we talk about how we kind of assign shame around the biases. And I think there's a time to do that, right? When our biases cause us to act inappropriately, or you all remember, in the last years, all of these things that come up on social media with people calling law enforcement unnecessarily, those sorts of things. I think sometimes when we think about biases, we automatically think about those behaviors, the behaviors that can lead to the harmful treatments, particularly of people of color. That is true. There are some harmful things that come out of biases, but the first step in transforming those harmful behaviors is understanding and digging deep and understanding that we all have biases. So I'm going to tell you all a real funny story here. Like I said, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and my dad was a pastor. He was a Spanish-speaking pastor, so my dad didn't speak English. And so we would often receive support from the English-speaking churches. Like people would often, come down and send missions teams down to Ciudad Juarez or El Paso and look at the work that, my dad and others were doing there. And so my perception as a young child was that all white people were rich. I didn't think that there were ever white people that were poor. I didn't see the first poor white person till I was well into my 20s. And that was a bias that I had. So like to me, upward mobility and wealth and wellness and power were all associated with whiteness. That is how like my mind worked, because that's all I knew. All I knew is that as a young child, my dad depended on white missionaries so that our family could be fed. And so that was a bias that I had to overcome, especially as I started working nationally and working in communities like in West Virginia or around the Appalachian Mountains, like I had no idea that there was poverty among the white community. And so that was because of lack of exposure, right? I was never exposed to that. So we all have to start assuming that we have these biases. We all have them. And then the next thing we do is doing kind of like a self-assessment of what are these behaviors that suggest you might have some hidden biases about particular groups. So here's the thing. Is your group always like you? Is your circle, your immediate circle, if you are in your 30s, Latina, Christian, able-bodied, all of these things, do you surround yourself with only those types of people, or are you intentionally reaching outside of your group? Or here's another question. Do you find racial, ethnic, gender, LGBTQ plus differences something that you would rather not discuss? I'll also share a quick experience here. I am married to a white man from Nebraska. And in our first years of marriage, it became very difficult to spend the holidays with my in-laws because there were certain things that we just couldn't talk about. Certain topics were off limits. We couldn't talk about race. We couldn't talk about politics. We couldn't talk about anything related in my world. Like so much of the work that I do revolves around how communities of color have been traditionally underserved and excluded from systems and from positions of power. And so we couldn't have those conversations because it made them uncomfortable. They were like, why do you have to make everything about race? Or why do you have to make everything about differences about the LGBTQ community? I mean, there was always this discomfort around having these conversations. And then the last one is around doing an assessment about our own behavior around the types of jokes that we laugh at. So, sometimes it may seem harmless, but do we laugh at those sorts of jokes about other groups of people? And these are ways that we can look at what are the biases that exist? What do we try to avoid? What do we laugh at? And who is missing in our circle when we think about who we worship with, who we interact with, who we do play dates with our kids with, like who's missing? Are there certain communities that we just don't tend to surround ourselves with? So right now, what we're going to be doing is thinking about some of these biases that exist. This is an identity circle. There are certain identities that we all carry. And in these identities, there's usually an identity that is dominant. Every other identity isn't dominant. Let's think about this in the context of Texas or the United States. If we look at language and communication skills, what would folks assume would be the dominant language in Texas? English. Thank you. Thank you. So the dominant language would be English. And what would be the dominant communication style when you see somebody that you say, oh, that's a good communicator? Who is that person? What are some of their characteristics of what you would assume is a good communicator?
They're speaking, limited hand gestures, able to articulate.
Yeah, so those are all things that we assign to that dominant group, right? We say if somebody can speak English, if somebody is articulate, if somebody is clear and concise and can get their message across, limits their hand movements, and now I'm looking at my hand. All of these things we assign to somebody that is preferred. And so everyone else would be non-dominant. Those would be the people that we would assume, oh, maybe they're not great communicators. Or if they don't speak fluent English, maybe they're not as intelligent or they're not as articulate. All of these things are things that we assign. Some of the biases that can occur around language would be if somebody doesn't speak English fluently, and this isn't always the case, but this is what sometimes we would assume is that perhaps somebody isn't intelligent, right? Oh, why haven't they learned English? How long have they been in America? Those are all of the things that we would assign to somebody not speaking English. And I'm just saying these are just some of the messages that occur sometimes. Somebody has been here for so many years, they should have picked up the language by now. Or, when we think about income, the dominant would be somebody that is either middle class or upper class. That is the preferred group. And anybody who isn't, we have biases or we make assumptions about those people. Perhaps, people that are living at the poverty line or below the poverty line may be lazy, may not want to work. Those sorts of biases or assumptions are often made. All right, I'm going to ask one or two groups to share with us what identity they selected and some of the biases that surround that identity.
I'll share.
Thank you, Adrienne.
I was in group 3, I believe, and we did work experience. And we talked about how there may be, there's a bias because there may be people who have never worked outside of their homes. We also discussed that may assume that that whatever job they're doing, maybe it's manual labor, that they don't like it. So we're assuming that they want to change it and do something different when in fact they could actually love it. Then also that we assume that a majority of them are doing manual labor type of jobs because maybe they don't have the skills necessary to do different higher level type positions.
Thank you, Adrienne. I appreciate you sharing. Those are all, very real assumptions that a lot of us hold. So thank you for sharing that.
We discussed education because one of the participants may need to take ESL or take a GED class doesn't mean they're not very intelligent, or they may already be highly educated in their country of origin, but it is difficult to get the paper, that things translated into the US, or what obstacles brought them there. But it's assumed just because they're wanting or needing a GED or ESL doesn't mean they're not already educated.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, very real. We see a lot of cases where a lot of folks might have higher education in their home country, but that doesn't always translate over to the type of job that they're able to have in the US. So very real situation. Folks, one of the things that I would encourage you to do, and a lot of learning that can occur, is if you were to do this identity wheel with your students and pick some of the identities and ask them what are some assumptions or biases that they have. And it can even be a very healing activity to understand that a lot of folks oftentimes will be down on themselves for speaking with an accent, or maybe they're in year 3 or 4 of ESL and they're still not advancing as quickly as they'd like. And so some of the times we need to remind them that just because these biases exist, that's not the reality for them. And so the bias is that if you speak with an accent, maybe you're not as intelligent. That isn't the case. And so maybe verbalizing that, saying it out loud, and then counteracting that can support and be a healing experience for your adult learners. I'm going to share with you all some commitments that we can make to really think about our biases and how do we counteract them. So we want to commit ourselves to fostering relationships, looking for those opportunities where our biases can be challenged. And the ways that we do that is by having deep conversations, having these activities around our journeys, building that sense of solidarity. We as adult instructors or facilitators need to commit to speaking up when we see implicit bias, particularly when it hurts our students or the adult learners. And then also committing to continuous improvement, training, and development. One of the pieces around introspection is we want to make sure that we explore where our implicit biases stem from. And then also look at how some of the biases are actually self-serving. Oftentimes, the things that we believe can continue to keep us in a position of power or a comfortable position. So how do we know? How do we challenge when our biases are self-serving? how do we benefit from implicit bias towards others, right? If we can say, like I shared with you all before, if I have this idea that I've never met a poor white person in my life, I can say, all white people are rich, and that can be a bias that I form in to keep them kind of separate and not want to engage in relationship or foster relationships with them. And then the other piece is some ongoing ways to continue to challenge implicit biases. So continue to have those relationships, continue to read and explore ways to understand other cultures and other points of views. We talked a little bit about some of the tools that you can use, but what are some of the ways that you can connect with the adult learners from your program? I always love sharing the story when I was teaching early on in my career, and I was teaching high school. I would get a lot of quinceañera invites. Sometimes I would be like, oh man, I really don't want to go. But it was a really great way to connect with the students. So when they'd invite me to quinceañeras, I'd try to go, asking them about their children, asking them about their families, particularly if they're immigrants, their families back home, how they're doing. Those are ways that we can connect with adult learners. One of the great things that I love about this idea of fostering community and fostering solidarity is that the gifts are so reciprocal. So we don't expect to receive gifts from stories. We expect, as facilitators and as teachers, our expectation is to be giving knowledge. But I want to challenge that notion and think about what are some of the unexpected gifts that you can receive through that exposure, through having those deep conversations with your group. And then also thinking about your commitment moving forward. What are some things that you can be doing as you think about connecting with your students, connecting and having deep relationships? We aren't going to have a ton of time to go through this, but I do want to share with you all this great book. I know it's focused on young children, but thinking about anti-bias education, it does interact with the adult learners. So thinking about ways, what are those anti-bias education goals? To demonstrate self-awareness, confidence, family pride, and positive social identities. Express comfort and joy with human diversity. These are all anti-bias goals, and it'd be great if you all put these up or thought about these as you think about lesson planning. Recognize unfairness, having the language to describe unfairness and understand that unfairness hurts. Demonstrate empowerment and the skills to act against prejudice or discrimination. And those are the 4 goals that we have. And so I'm going to share this book with you all. Again, if you want to snap a picture of it for future reference, and it goes through those 4 goals.
Oh, I'll say something. This is Margie again. I think I'm so glad that y'all are doing this. This is hard. This is hard to look at. And most of us are helpers, and we think, oh, I don't have any implicit biases, but I'm sorry, but I do. And I wish I didn't have them. So I want to, as I can, if I hear myself or I hear somebody else, ask, oh, is that the kind of thing that I say? And to just admit it, is not to beat myself, but just to put it out there, because it can't heal without being, shown and shared. So thank you. Thank you, Rosa.
Thanks, Margie. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to understand that we're not trying to demonize anybody. It's just something that we have been ingrained with all our lives. And we're in a system where we celebrate dominance, right? We celebrate all of the, it's the American dream to come to this country, learn English, build a business, and make tons of money, right? And so when folks don't achieve that, or when it takes longer to achieve that, it's easy to demonize, or it's easy to feel like they're less than. And so challenging those assumptions, challenging those beliefs, understanding that isn't everyone's story. Lastly, I just want to encourage you all, like I mentioned before, this work isn't just for educators, right? It isn't just for adult educators and facilitators. one of the best gifts that you can give back to your students is having these conversations in the classroom, having these conversations around the biases that exist, because that in itself can be a very healing experience. That is it for me.
Thank you so much, Rosa, for being willing to share your presentation and your activities with Texas Adult Ed. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rosa.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.